Hey everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. Glad to see so many faces who are interested in Web 2.5. And I think we have like a great set of panelists and we're going to have like an amazing conversation today. So I quickly want to start off with quick intros. I can start with mine and then we can go on with Venki and so on. Quickly about me, I'm Shilika. I lead PR and comms at a growth marketing DAO based in US, which is called Myosin. We work with a bunch of like really interesting projects out there like Ripple, Solana. We worked with Solana in the past. We're working with Ripple right now. And we generally help like a lot of Web2 companies to actually try out and figure out their Web3 strategy. We also help like a lot of Web3 brands to, market, figure out their product market fit, figure out like how they can get to the X amount of like users in the Web3 space. But that's a quick bit about me. But I'll quickly go on to Venki so that he can give a quick intro.
Hey, thanks. As it says, I currently run marketing at the BNRY Holdings. But I'm 3 months old into the system, so my perspective on this panel is going to be mostly like outside looking in and what interested me in this project to get involved. But as a quick background, the last couple of years I've been working with different like gaming and infra projects in the Web3 space, specifically in Southeast Asia. And before that, I led the movie marketing business at Netflix in India.
Ooh, okay, guys, let's blow up some steam. I think this is definitely one of the most intense conferences that I have ever been to, because personally, I feel that we have a lot of polarized opinions in the room. We have a lot of Web2 enthusiasts and a lot of Web3 enthusiasts. And right now, I think to me, we are not talking about how to bridge this, but we are talking about Web3, Web4, and Web5, and how to actually mediate all of this space. And I think that's definitely like a very heavy task. And one of the topics that we are discussing in this panel, obviously, is to revisit what we talk about user experience, but obviously about how to abstract the experiences for the users. So myself, I'm Nicole. I'm based in Vietnam. I run a community of builders in Asia called APAC DAO. So full disclaimer, we are not a DAO yet. We are still finding the right tools to make it into a DAO, because we think that basically at the moment engagement is one of the biggest challenges for people, especially in the Web3 space, to actually use the product and actually also to be part of the community. So we have been working with tier 1 projects like Ripple, of course Uniswap here, Story Protocol, the BNRY, to grow the community in Southeast Asia and onboard more users and builders. So we'll be very happy to share about how we have been working with the community, maybe some geopolitics drama in the space, because I think Southeast Asia is definitely like a great place to be, and definitely would be keen to connect with you after this. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Steve. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Earnscape, and this is kind of a core thesis of ours. And I would say there's actually maybe a few words missing in the title. I would say that users need to not know. It's not that they don't need to know, it's that they probably shouldn't know that what they're using is actually running on blockchain, because if they have to know, then they create a whole lot of friction points. And one of our whole theses is that there should be zero friction for anyone to try and enter into really any ecosystem. If you want to increase adoption, it's got to be as seamless as humanly possible. But yeah, so we're in gaming. We are focused on user acquisition for games, specifically mobile games. And one thing that gaming really misses, and Web3 really seems to miss, but we've talked a lot about here at this particular summit, is that almost everybody who has an interest in Web3 and people who are interested in gaming, they're all mobile first. Like in APAC specifically, it's like 80% plus is mobile first and mobile only. A lot of these people don't even have the computers that they would need to interface with dApps, with smart contracts, with all these Web3 protocols. So making sure that this is all completely abstracted away so that it's a lot more seamless for people and that there's more use cases than just speculating on tokens is one of our primary theses, and we use Web3 to facilitate a lot of that. So looking forward to taking this conversation forward and making sure that people know that there is a really good use case for Web 2.5. And I hate the term Web 2.5, by the way. I don't really like mashing them together like that. It just needs to work. And that's kind of what we are all here trying to do, is to make sure that all these technologies work together in a way that's seamless for the user so they don't lose interest in it.
Agreed. I'm Ryan. I love crypto, and I don't think it works. So hopefully I'll be the bear case for crypto up here. I work for, or used to work for up until about a month ago, Solana. So primarily trying to convince games that they wanted to put NFTs and tokens into video games. I'm here to tell you that they shouldn't. So excited to see what we can dig up and dig into here on the Web 2.5 side.
Cool. I think that's a great set of panelists that we have. So we will definitely have like a lot more interesting insights coming through. And I'm personally very excited. The topic of the panel, I think all of us can see that why does Web3's biggest users need not know they're using it, right? And this is a conversation that's happening. We've spoken about account abstraction, smart chain account abstraction. We've spoken about like account abstraction in general. Chain abstraction has been like a topic that's quite interesting. And I think like UI, UX, simplifying user experience, better accessibility, interoperability. I think all of these heavy words are something that we've been chatting about and talking about for quite some time. And we keep seeing that at all the other conferences, right? So my quick question, and the first question to Nicole would be that why do you think the future of Web3 adoption depends on users actually not knowing how to use it?
I think all of the talks this morning, as well as the previous panel, has already covered this. But I think, of course, just to sum up and recap what all of the speakers have shared, I think number one is the users simply don't care. I mean, provided that you have a good product market fit. If your product doesn't deliver any value, I don't think anybody is going to care about anything, the user experience or the tech stacks. So I think number one is simply they don't care. Number two is I think the education and the awareness of the users might still be a little bit nascent for this space. What I mean by that is, for instance, of course, with all of the Web3 players, we talk about zero knowledge proof. One of the very kind of simple use cases is that you can go to a bar without revealing your ID, and you can, let's say, get validated that you are over 18 years old, for instance. This kind of use case has been around. I mean, it has been applied by banks, ING, for instance, in the Netherlands, for example. But then not a lot of banks or even the users, they know how all of this information is being processed. Because basically, we are still very comfortable in this space, where we just want to make sure that our data is somewhere safe with the bank and a data center somewhere where we don't actually, know how the information has been processed. So I mean, at this stage, the Web3 space is like this. So you have the read, write, own, and with the Web2 space, without the own, and then you're trying to bridge this gap and kind of making the users really kind of understand and really kind of want to own the data. And I think that this is still like something very daunting for a lot of Web3 players. So adoption by force, I think it's not like a great choice, a scenario in this situation. If the users really haven't got to that stage yet, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to push that, that kind of knowledge or the need of the product maybe earlier than what they need. So that's the third point. And the last point, I think going back to what Shilika has mentioned about chain abstraction, it's a very fancy term, I think, especially for Web2 people. So we talk about chain abstraction, and I think recently we talk about chain abstraction. We have near, we have particle network, for instance, where they are trying to bring this sort of, they abstract all of the technologies behind. So they just want to be able to bring this front end to users, and the users and the developers, they can actually pick the utilities that they want without knowing what kind of infrastructure, what kind of chains are supporting that. So I think that Web3 people, we have been more practical, I think, and I hope so, that in kind of bringing this technology to everyone. And with this chain abstraction, it's one way for us to actually focus more on what's going to be displayed, what's going to be provided and offered to the users, instead of talking about all of these like endless tech jargons. And yeah, I think it's still relatively early at this point to talk about this, but I think we are on the right track of making this technology closer to the heart of the users.
I think a great point that you mentioned, that adoption should not be by force. same thing, token also should not be by force, right? And I think a lot of projects don't understand that. So my quick question again to Nicole as well as Steve would be that what are the key solutions, like what are the key motivations of why people should build solutions that abstract away the whole Web3 side of things and make it more user-friendly?
I guess I'll start. So if it has to be, I don't want to use the term force, but if you have to learn all this additional technology, it really obscures your experience. We heard earlier people talking about how, I think it was Gunn, saying how people don't even think about the fact that their apps are running on the cloud because it just functions.
Yeah, they're not saying like, oh yeah, stored it to the AWS database. Oh, that was awesome.
Yeah,
what
nobody
a sweet
talks
experience,
about that.
right? That doesn't happen.
No, like nobody cares. Even the people that are familiar with the fact that this is all running on a Web2 backend, that your stuff is all being stored on some other person's, because the cloud is really just someone else's computer. So the fact that we all know this, but we still use these services, we just don't care. And people who are trying to get into Web3, right now the people who are trying to get into Web3 do care because they're super techies, they're super technical, but we've kind of maxed out on almost all of those people that are going to get into Web3. If we're going to grow Web3, and again, I hate using the term Web 2.5, it's got to be more of a Web 2.5 approach where it just functions because the people that are going to be using it now, the people that we want to onboard, we hear the term onboard the next billion users all the time, they don't care. They don't care what chain they're on. They don't care what the token ERC protocol is. They don't care about any of this. They just want to know that the system that they're using functions, solves their problem, and makes their lives at least somewhat better. And if you can do that through a Web3 technology versus a Web2 technology a little bit more, and you can, then you should be using Web3. Problem is that a lot of times people who are building Web3 technologies don't think that way because, again, we're all techies and we try to use the most advanced fancy tech. So we pick chains based on number of TPS, the latency, transaction fees, and yeah, that's all important. But from a business perspective, if you're going to onboard users into your product, the users don't care about that. Does the chain that you're using solve the problem for the user, and can you actually use it to facilitate the application that you're building? If so, then go ahead. But if for example, EVM is the biggest, I would say, ecosystem. It's really easy to abstract across EVM. But if you're going to go to buy something that's only sold on Solana, then you have to be able to abstract that away. Otherwise, the user's not going to want to use it because they can't interface with this game that's only on Solana. Well, I'm in gaming, obviously, so a lot of the games we work with are EVM. But if they want to buy an asset that's using their EVM assets that's on a Solana game, they just can't do that without knowing all these DeFi protocols that are making it so they can swap across chains. So we need systems that abstract that away.
And Solana has never gone down, ever, when we've hit any sort of critical mass of users, which is definitely not something enterprise cares about.
No, that's never a problem with Solana.
No, not even once.
Anything else to add on? Nicole, Venki?
Just full disclosure, I still don't get this account as abstraction as a concept. So if you see one face in the blank on stage, that's probably mine. Yeah, actually, I just wanted to put that out as a PSA.
Don't worry, most of us haven't got it because it's still a concept stage. But what I do mean is that, just to reflect what the guys have mentioned is more like, I guess, of course, one of the key innovations that we have at these days is like aggregator, like kind of gateway and portal for, for developers to be basically help them with developing a lot of these products and tools. So I think chain abstraction is one way for you to actually optimize the resources and basically kind of specify the needs of the developers and the founders before they can go into all of these analysis about what kind of technology, what kind of infrastructure, what kind of tools, what kind of platforms is going to work with this. And again, I think that still there's this, I think maybe there's still this kind of, I would say, this gap in between the users and the builders in the space as well. Because, for instance, I mean, even in Asia or so on, I mean, we take pride in our gaming users, for instance, with population. And most of the time, I mean, a lot of the Web2 gamers, of course, they care more about the experience, how to really, like the speed and the game content and everything. On the Web3 side, like the builders, sometimes they care more about I don't know, monetizing the content, the creators, how you can actually kind of have more decentralized value, how to have more transparency. But obviously, there's kind of this gap in between the values that the users perceive and the values that the founders and the builders perceive. So I think that basically, I think that might also explain the reasons why we really kind of need to abstract this sort of, technology kind of story, and why the users might not need to know what they are using, what the founders are using in the back.
Definitely. Coming to you, Ryan, how has the evolution of Web3 infrastructure over the last couple of years enabled blockchain integrations into enterprises? Like, let's say, for example, gaming, right? What are like the games that people are playing without even realizing that these guys have like blockchain features?
The short answer is none of them. I don't think that there's
we have binary.
I know. So we're working on it. I think there's a lot of things. I think one thing, if you take a step back and look at gaming more generally, right? The biggest game that was in Web3 was Axie Infinity, and that happened in 2021. Typically, the build cycle for video games is anywhere between 3 to 7 years, depending on how much investment. I mean, GTA 6 is now in development for what, like 12 years? And so we are now just getting to the point where a normal video game cycle is coming to fruition for actually decently constructed games by decently constructed teams. I think the big one that people are paying attention to right now on the gaming side is Off the Grid, put together by Gunzilla, available on PC, Xbox, PlayStation right now. And it's a very great game, but they're just launching their L1, which is an AVAX L1, and they're rolling out slowly the ability for people to trade and buy and sell skin assets. The reason that it works for this game is they have now already built a user base, which I think a lot of crypto often forgets that you need users that are actually going to pay money, and you're going to have to earn revenue and not just rely on hype and token price. You need real people doing things, and so they have built up this user base first. I think, though, more generally speaking, where this becomes very, very interesting is the reason blockchain exists, right? It's the verifiable transfer of value. And so there are points in businesses where it becomes, especially with the advancement of AI and the advancement of technology, self-driving cars, everything, the faster that you can transfer value, the better experience it is for the user, and the better experience I think it is for the business. So one of the big things that just happened, I think it was yesterday, Coinbase rolled out an update to the HTTPS call that happens on a website. And I think this is like massive implications because everyone uses a website. But now they can token gate that HTTPS call and lock it behind potentially some values. So for an example, you could charge, let's just say 5 cents USDC to someone who visits the website. And while everyone here is saying like the website, like the internet's free, like why would I charge someone to come visit my website? Well, if an AI is going to come and scrape your data, suddenly you want to introduce some sort of gate so that these LLMs aren't scraping all of your data. And so that's a moment that is now live on the blockchain using USDC stablecoin payments that is now going to start being introduced, and you're going to see more projects coming around this. And this gives even into the future where, if you're in your self-driving car and you're late for work and you want to speed through the highway, you just like pay people in front of you to move out of the way, and you're just putting a button over and over and over and over again just so you can get to work faster because you're going to be late because you have that very important meeting. There's just moments like this that suddenly become very important to make sure that it's verifiable that you can spend that money. So these are just things that I think are very exciting, but we're still on the precipice of seeing a lot of the work that has gone on over the past 3, 4, 5 years it's finally coming to fruition now.
I just want to kind of add something to that.
Yeah, please.
So I don't know how many people have actually read the Bitcoin white paper, but one of the original use cases was basically micropayments for activity that takes place on the internet.
Yeah.
And this is something that never actually worked out simply because, one, the core technology to facilitate that interaction between the blockchain and traditional websites wasn't there, which is there now. And 2, because Bitcoin got taken over by Moon Boys. So we got to the point where you were never going to be able to do something like that because the transaction fees were prohibitive. So now we have technologies where you have sub 1 cent transaction fees. And with USDC stablecoins now, people have an incentive to actually do this. So the technology is there now. We can actually use blockchain for the original use case.
Just think of it, you no longer have to spend 3.5% to make, to a credit card company in order to accept payments. You can now do sub 1 cent transaction fees using stablecoins. I think like that is like a step order magnitude change. But again, if I'm an everyday user and I'm logging in to like play Candy Crush, I don't care that the game is now suddenly using stablecoins on the back end, right? The company just makes more money off of me because they don't have to pay all these extra fees on the back end, and that's better for the bottom line of the business.
Yeah, just to continue with that narrative, I'm just curious about maybe from Vish, like from the binary, what kind of new business models or incentives model that you have seen, or you can foresee with while you guys are developing the binary? We would really want to learn more from the developer side as well.
Okay, I think I'll take a step back to sort of like talk about what I think of it. I think the fundamentals of business still remains the same, and the fundamentals of what a user requires. And I think it moves beyond great user experience and great user design. I think it's user convenience, and those things haven't, the fundamentals of that hasn't changed regardless of industry. I'll go back to entertainment because that's sort of like where I come from. I think before Netflix, there was Blockbuster, and and all through the journey, there's always been like theatrical movies, right? So the fundamental need to address an entertainment sort of deficiency in a person has always remained. It's just the ways and means have changed, and that's how I think integrating Web3 into Web2 to become Web 2.5 should naturally evolve. It is to keep the consumer, the user at the center of it, as well as have business fundamentals of costs, profit ratios, et cetera. And that's, I think, the balance that we need to strike, is my like hot take on this. And I think from a binary perspective, I think that's still at the core of like what we do. While from a business side of things, it's two things. It's looking at what is a need state of the consumer that we are going after in sort of the underdeveloped markets, and how fast can we ship products and test and see where that works. Those are the two things, let's say, on the Web 2 side of things. On the Web 3 side of things is obviously like what's the value add we can bring through blockchain technology. So I think these three features or these three checkpoints are crucial and critical to what we do. And that's why when you see a lot of our products, it reflects that, right? It's what's the market, what's interesting in the market, what's got a lot of value, and how can we bring that value to our consumers. Because very honestly, when we talk Web3 or when we talk most of like what Web3 is, it's at a realm where the users that we want to speak to, the users we want to add value to in the value chain, do not really have space in that sort of like conversation. That's completely like, they're a market that's, for the lack of a better word, I would say that's ignored in these conversations. So that's where we try and like step in.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? Like adding value. I think like even with tokens, even with anything that we're trying to do, adoption should not be forced, right? It should be more like value driven. And that's something I completely agree to. Just moving forward, I quickly want to ask you, like, can you like break down Web 2.5 for us? Like, can you break that us for like, in terms of like, what is it in practice and how is it like a powerful bridge between like enterprises and blockchain technology?
Okay, I'll do it like really quick. I think we have like 2 or 3 minutes left. First of all, I think adoption cannot be forced, right? Like even when you look at Web 2 with social media, as Bobby said, there were lots of other social media platforms, but I think what Facebook did was it mirrored sort of like human beings, like basic social needs of being able to read, being able to like, dislike, do a lot of things that mirrored human behavior really closely. And that to me, that was, I think, like probably why they sort of like broke out. Second thing, I think that worked for them in terms of user adoption, which we also do, is we are co-believers that captive audiences are far more critical and far more value, bring a lot more value than like trying to just acquire users from different means. Therefore, the entire like us plugging into legacy businesses and adding value at both sides of the chain. Web 2.5, very simply, I think like how can we smartly, quickly, and effectively use certain aspects of blockchain technology to existing Web2 businesses to sort of, I guess, like bridge that gap. That's a one-liner of how I would put it. But I'm curious to know from like crypto OGs what they think.
I agree that I don't like the Web 2.5. Web 2.5 just means it's Web 3, but it's just hidden and abstracted away. And so like if you have something that's on chain, it's Web 3. It doesn't matter how easy the user experience is. It's never going to be 2.5, right? It's on chain or off chain. But let me build on that a little bit and what you guys are saying. And I guess I'll say something nice about BNRY because they paid for my hotel and they're feeding me for a couple days. But I think one of the things that happens a lot with many blockchain or crypto-based organizations is there are two things that tokens do really, really well. They're really good at raising funds, and they're really good at acquiring users. And every single crypto company thinks they need to launch their own token in order to do that. What BNRY is bringing to the table is the ability to tap into their token and their network. A gaming company, 95% of the time, you may be a bit better, we'll see, good luck, Godspeed. But they don't need to launch their own token because they're game developers, they're not blockchain or finance experts, right? And so if you can tap into the user acquisition path of that, but bring to them, which is something that they're looking to build out with their dApp network, is the attention economy, right? You compare two teams that are doing each individually one thing very, very well without potentially tanking. I mean, 99% of the games that I talked to 2 years ago don't exist anymore. And that's because their token is just down only the moment they launch it after they make their VCs happy because the VCs get to dump on retail. So I think it's a very, very compelling narrative for BNRY to be able to say, hey, come join us. We'll work on the user acquisition side of the token, the value that the token can bring. You guys focus on building the game and drawing attention and keeping attention inside, and it becomes a very virtuous cycle. And I think that happens, I love gaming, but it happens against all content types. If someone can bring the attention, BNRY can bring the user acquisition, it's a match made in heaven. So.
Yeah, I would say like you say, all these tokens die because they shouldn't exist. Most tokens that are launched should not be launched. They have no purpose other than to raise funds so the VCs can dump on retail. It's unfortunate, but if you're going to be, and just to be clear, I'm not a game developer.
I know. You're in user acquisition specialist.
We're also user acquisition,
we know.
With live streaming and data and whatnot.
Yeah.
But so if you're going to have tokenization, and I would guess, again, for the third time, I hate the term Web 2.5, but if you're going to go with Web 2.5, the way you should implement it is take something that already can be built easily with a centralized database with like an AWS server or whatnot, and just put it on chain. Don't try to bolt on a token just because you want to have a token so that you can launch and raise and try to acquire users that way. You should build a product that people actually want to use that has a valid use case, and then you can migrate some of the technology that you're using when it makes sense to a distributed ledger. And then don't try to pump the token price. Just let it work the way that it should.
You mean focus on like revenue and stuff?
Focus on your product and your revenue, guys.
I think we're having like a lot of token conversations. I know we all love tokens, but just coming back to the point, my follow-up question to Venki would be that, like, how is BNRY Holdings integrating their solutions into these enterprise apps, like familiar enterprise apps? And can you just give us a more deep dive on how the onboarding journey looks like?
Again, I think I'll keep it short. It's just addressing needs on both ends, right? Like one, from a legacy company's perspective, like specifically, but there was a lot spoken about it. I think there is an issue to be solved in terms of what more can we do with our captive users on the telco side, for example. And on the Web3 side, I think we've already had like strong examples of people saying like, yes, we're building, we don't know what we're building, and we don't know who we are building for. Just like very, very like crudely put. I think we're just trying to solve that. We're trying to solve it as a distribution platform. And so when we go into rooms, we're not necessarily pitching. We're actively hearing what the pain points are and offering solutions for it. So that again doubles down on the fact that we do love to launch products quickly and quickly to market, test it, either keep working on it or quickly move on. And I think that's helpful for both sides of the coin.
I think we've been speaking about like building, right? But marketing also is like very, very important. And the messaging from the product as well as the marketing side will also differ. Messaging for Web 2 will differ from Web 3. So my question to Steve and Ran would be that how does the messaging change for Web 3 enable tools to like attract like mainstream users? Like we can't use the same messaging, right? Like what should be different?
Don't mention tokens or NFTs or crypto.
Never.
Honestly, like just do not, right? I think one of the apps that's in binary right now is it's TikTok, but there's ads. Like watch video and earn rewards. You don't know crypto in there. The moment you add crypto, you lose like 90% of the audience, right? And so the same thing, play a fun game, earn rewards. It's very straightforward. You do not need to change the lingo. You need to do what's worked. You need to do what draws a consumer-grade audience, and that is to not talk about crypto, because whenever you talk about crypto, Trump launched a meme coin, and like my grandma got scammed out of whatever when they had their Bitcoin back in the day, or they lost their ledger. Well, I don't know. There's just so much connotation that comes with crypto. Don't even mention it, and just give them a really good user experience on the front end, which I know is what you're doing. And then let the consumer apps do what they do, which is draw on users, let them use their app, have a really good experience.
Yeah, and I'll also throw Binary a bone because they're doing this the right way.
You lucky ducks, you're getting bones left and right up here.
Yeah, you don't, until we actually started talking a lot more, I didn't even really understand how Web3 interfaced with the binary ecosystem at all. And that's a good thing, because that means that you don't shill, you're not like trying to pump and dump a token. It means that you actually are doing it the right way by building an ecosystem people want and then tokenizing various aspects that can use tokenization so that you can improve performance. That's a good thing. And that's how we should be building products that use Web3 technology. We shouldn't be trying to shill a token. We shouldn't be talking about how, it's going to moon 100x, buy now. Everybody's trying to sell me Web3 marketing services because they know that we have a token coming up. And I'm like, you have to do Web3 marketing different than you do Web2 marketing. I'm like, screw you. I know exactly why you want to do Web3 marketing, because you want to take a cut of the allocation, and then you want to pump the token, and then you want to dump it on the people that actually use our product in our ecosystem. And I don't want you to do that. And unfortunately, that's one of the reasons why so many Web3 projects fail, because they do exactly that. They take all this money to pump a token, and then they dump that on things that aren't related to the token, and then the token dumps. And that's a huge failure as an industry. Web3 is a vertical, which I don't even think it's a vertical, it's a technology. But anyone who's building Web3 technologies makes this mistake 90% of the time plus. And Binary doesn't do that, and the people who are successful don't do that. So there's a pretty obvious lesson to be learned there.
I think we can go on and on, but coming to the last question, the closing question of this panel, I would like to ask you all to share me like one-liner on this, because we don't have like much time. What's the prediction for businesses who don't integrate or ignore this shift that's happening right now, who don't integrate like Web3 infrastructure in the next couple of years? Like, what's your take on that? One-liners, quickly.
I think they're going to be happy not knowing what chain abstraction is. Pretty much. But I think like in the next 2 years, next 5 years, 10 years, there are businesses which probably don't need blockchain technology as urgently as other sectors do. And I think everyone's going to thrive. The markets are too big for us, at least for me to personally say that blockchain is the future. Blockchain is one of the futures, but I don't think I would say we want to put all our eggs in the same basket.
To be honest, I don't remember what kind of web we are talking about right now, like Web5, Web6. But maybe it's just an unconventional thought. I don't think the number really matters, especially right now when we have so many generative content and it's coming as a force. So even though you think you have the right to read or own or write, but it might not be your own right in your own term. So kind of really have to think about a future where we have to really work with AI agents and all of this stuff. So Web5 or Web6 would not matter that anymore. And the last point, this is not consulting advice, guys. So do your own research, and basically full disclaimer about all of our panel, do your own research. Basically, this is not advice for any kind of token or management, wealth management.
Steve?
Yeah, always do your own research. But I would say that there's two main reasons why they don't. One is because of the negative connotation, that crypto's a scam, where that's a problem that we just have to address over time. And one of the ways is by not talking about the crypto stuff much. But The real thing that I'm trying to say here is that the other prospect or the other problem that is driving a lot of companies away from going to Web3 is because they view it as a loss of control, a loss of revenue, a loss of value capture, when that's really not the case. If they actually look at how the full cycle of human psychology works, it does increase your revenue. So if you continue to try to tighten your grip on maintaining absolute control over your own ecosystem rather than allowing your users to actually gain some control over it and what they've created and allow them to monetize it, you're just going to slowly lose out. You'll keep it for a while, but over time, the sand is going to slip through your fingers and you'll slowly lose.
Jain?
Ooh, such cheery things to think about. I would posit this, which is Web3 and blockchain offers the seamless transfer of verifiable value. In an age where AI and AI agents are coming up very, very quickly and value is transferred over the internet, what medium do you think AI agents are going to transact with each other in the near future? And do you think that's going to be the cash sitting in your wallet, or it's going to be the verifiable on-chain value that they can transfer between wallet accounts online? So that's why if you're an enterprise not paying attention to blockchain in some sort of capacity, because we know every enterprise is thinking about AI, you should also be thinking about blockchain, because that's how people are going to be transferring value to you as a business. And the people that are going to be transferring the value are going to be the AI agents that are doing this on people's behalf. So just something to keep in mind.
Pay attention to enterprises, pay attention to binary. We'll just quickly open the floor to questions for the audience. If anyone has questions, please raise your hands. Any questions?
I know we were so good.
We always answer
got one in the back.
questions in
We'll have
advance.
someone.
We'll have just this solo audience question, and then I'll call for a bit of a break. I think we all need one.
Sorry, I know it's me again. I hate when there's no questions from the audience. I will always really try not to be me.
Appreciate it.
But yes, first of all, I want to thank the panel. I think we had a very, very high-level conversation. So I want to, of course, thank the curatorship and BNRY for putting this together. I agree with a lot of the things you guys say. I mean, again, it's not the first time in the first rodeo. But I want to focus here on the narrative. Because, yeah, I agree. I mean, okay, the token and the pumping and dumping. But again, this is 2025. This is not ICO. This is not 2016, 17, 18. What we missed in order to change a narrative ever since, number one. Number two, we talked before about regulations, MiCAs and so forth. Technically speaking, this was the idea, right? We are giving, whatever, investors and consumers, the framework to actually create the other narrative. Crypto is good. Crypto is regulated. You can come to crypto because you know what? Your grandmother is protected. So again, what is missing?
Yeah, I've touched on a lot of this, a lot of the narrative, and actually a lot of us have talked a lot about this, that in order to fix the narrative, we just have to stop talking about the crypto. Talk about the value generated from using the technology and not about the 100x gains that you're going to get by holding this token for 3 days, because you're probably not. And I was talking to someone earlier, if you hold a trade longer than a few minutes, you're probably going to lose. You want to just, if you're going to do a trade, okay, no financial advice, I'll stop there. So yeah, the narrative shift needs to just be away from financial gain right out of the gate and more on problems solved. And
I think the very simple start is when I think stablecoins are a very, very easy way to get a narrative that feels a bit safer than trying to figure out which token isn't going to go up 99% or down 99% in a 12-hour period. So I think a lot of users, if they get used to using things around the stablecoin area, and one of the value adds that stablecoins can bring outside of just using the USD in your bank account or paying with your credit card is the fact that when you have stablecoins are being transacted around in many different ways all over all the different blockchains. And so at least at the moment, because of those inefficiencies, there's an arbitrage opportunity or there's a yield opportunity. And so I think there's some really interesting opportunities where if BNRY has tokens in a wallet, especially for these underserved communities, right? If that token is held in the wallet and is essentially staked and has a yield-bearing opportunity to earn, I don't know, 4, 8, 10% on whatever you're holding, that becomes a very interesting thing. Like, oh, I can carry around $10 in my wallet and that's earning 5% yield versus the 10, like the however much I have to hold in my bank account in order to do that, and it's much less accessible than the cash in my wallet. I think that's one of the things that stablecoins brings to the table that I think is very, very interesting, and it's a reason for someone to not just use the cash in their wallet, and that is, I think, very, very exciting, and it would change the narrative to your point, and you don't have to invest in fart coin or whatever meme coin comes out that has a very, so.
I think those were great insights, and we can go on, but I think it was a great panel, great
There's
insights.
one more question. Are we allowed to get one more in? No, we're calling it. Officials from the sidelines are throwing in the towel. I apologize,
y'all can chat.
everyone.
We'll take that one. We'll take that. Since you guys have been spoke so much about binary, I can't let the last question go.
The judges have overturned the ruling after a video replay. Let's hear the last question.
Okay. I actually really appreciate the conversation you guys are having about pump and dumps, and I've seen this market evolve quite a lot since I first got into it. I bought my first Bitcoin in 2013.
Hey,
and
well done.
I don't have them now, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But
that's the story we're talking about.
But the point I'm trying to make is the people that I was dealing with then and the companies that we were looking to grow, and I was somewhat surprised to hear your take on how Bitcoin was taken over by moon boys, as you refer to them. I think the utility of crypto has changed, and the way in which fundraising has happened in this industry is, in my opinion, quite a lot of the times quite deplorable. I think the notion of democratizing finance and ownership of these networks has been taken advantage of quite a number of times, as you guys have pointed out. It's just another way of saying, let's target the retail investors that don't know best, and we can pull the wool over their eyes and dump on them. Now, we can talk about what's needed in Web3 from a user and UI UX perspective, but you can get that absolutely right. And you can grow a big user base, and you can grow tons of trust on the platform and around the platform. And a perfect example of this was our good friends at FTX, right? Everyone using this platform to exchange on, holding their money, using it like a bank. And you had Sam Bankman-Fried talking to politicians, getting SEC unofficial SEC blessing, and suddenly you have all these guys calling him the golden child, and then what happens, right? You have guys at Luna, 3 Arrows, everything happening at the same time. That wasn't down to bad UI, UX. That wasn't necessarily down to even the pump and dumps that happened before that. This is down to governance. This is down to a lack of not just regulation, but a lack of internal regulation, a lack of internal controls. You can have the best app and the best business in the world, but if everything behind that business and everything that is in control of those assets come crumbling down, then it's actually not just irrelevant, it's relevant, but in the wrong way. So I'm actually surprised that we haven't been talking that much about governance in the industry and how important it is for companies to be able to show that they can be professional, that they can be trusted. Now, back to the original point of my statement, which was most of the funds that were raised were from retail investors or VCs that have the know and can dump on someone else. That's easy. When we're getting to the point now where you become an industry that needs to be institutionalized, you're going from venture to growth to exit to IPO. You're not talking to the mums and pops. You're talking to the institutional investors. You're talking to the IBs. You're talking to the larger sovereign wealth funds that are going to drill down to what's actually important. And what I want to ask you guys is, do you think the industry right now is ready for that, honestly?
Some. It depends on the actor in the industry, right? Like some actors, absolutely not. Most centralized exchanges, probably not. A lot of these decentralized organizations probably could be. Now, are they? They should be, because in theory, everything is on chain, everything's verifiable, everything's immutable, and we can see how the transfer and the assets are being held. But yeah, most people just aren't ready to do that in a centralized manner, but we need to decentralize.
There you go.
I think the case, just to back with the case with FTX, I mean, it's not like the matter of technology. I think it's more about the people's problem. For instance, of course, it's a kind of a chain domino effect when you have 10 milliseconds the lives of those corporates involved, and then everyone just blind trusted all of this chain, and then it kind of went down the drain, and that's where we have this whole fiasco. But it's not like, I think technologically, I don't think like centralized exchange is like the best example of what we are doing in the space. It's more like, I think like what we mean by Web 2.5, so more like an onboarding sort of platform for people to get into the space. So I think if the industry, I think your question is about whether the industry is, at this point, is right for regulations just yet. I mean, it's not a matter of choice, because we cannot really kind of say or, give the regulators a choice to regulate this space, right? It's going to happen. But I think the question, let's say the right approach is to maybe not looking at the regulators as regulators, but maybe more like a player in the scene. I think that's how we have been dealing with some of the sandbox in some of the countries like Hong Kong or Singapore, for instance, where they have more advanced framework. If the regulators, they can actually change their mind and kind of think about how they can actually participate in this game. So for them or for institutions, maybe that's kind of the right headspace that we should be in. And I cannot really say whether it's right or wrong, but it's going to happen. And basically, it's going to be like a long game. So everyone just have to kind of collaborate in that front.
I will say FTX was not on chain, so we could have seen it coming if it was on chain. Regardless, I don't. Are institutions, should they invest today? Solana is by far the highest user base of any crypto blockchain that's out there. It goes down whenever a meme coin takes off. I don't think from a tech perspective there's any blockchain that's out there that's quite ready for the users that we're talking about. I think that that's going to change very, very soon. That's from a tech perspective side. From a regulatory perspective side, I think I always come back to stablecoins because people are already using this type of technology. And I think if that can roll out in a more broad way where you can talk to government officials about how you can be better tracking taxable events or things like that that are on chain, I think those are conversations that government bodies would get very excited about. But that will take its time. But from a tech perspective, I think it's good from an investment perspective to think about taking small outsized bets. But I still think, like, again, the blockchain goes down like way too often. So it's going to be a couple of years before we can get ready for more than the 100,000 people that are actually using any sort of crypto technology. We'll see.
I think those were all like great insights, and it was definitely an intense conversation that we've had, and the conversation can keep going. So you all can meet the panelists probably after the panel, catch them around at the dinner, catch them around, and have like some great insights and conversations. Thank you, everyone. You all have been a great audience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to preface, I do love crypto. It's really hairy out there sometimes.